Yes, what I'm going to be going over today is my top 10 tips or reasons that you could consider before purchasing a gaming monitor or just a monitor in general, for professional use. Excuse me. So a lot of people feel that it's just, in past times they did anyway. I think people are becoming a lot more cognizant of it now with the new technologies, but the monitor was just an afterthought for most people, especially whenever it was a CRT monitor, because they were all pretty good performers. Some had a lot more color accuracy, some than others did, but you're going to get a constant 60 hertz out of those because that's just what they run at. So a lot of people took that for granted up until flat panels started to come into play. And that's whenever a lot of people now started paying attention to the hertz rate of their monitors, because you can definitely tell a difference 60 and sub 60. And then a lot of people can see it above 60, which is like myself. So that's my first topic is the refresh rate. If you're looking to be playing a lot of games, especially competitive gaming, you're going to want every edge that you can get, right? So squeaking out every frame per second that you can on a monitor that makes it visible for you, you're going to just benefit from it greatly, right?
So higher FPS.
Higher FPS, right? Well, your higher visible FPS,
right?
And that coincides with the second point, which is response time. The response time determines how quickly the pixels can change their color. Faster response times can reduce ghosting and motion blur in fast-paced games. So
it'll help people call me back.
Right.
Because, they ghost me so often, and I just can't. So I need a higher response, because that literally is, it's a higher response time. They ghost me, and I never. Okay.
Can't imagine why.
I'm so glad you're not the only one with that problem.
Can't imagine why.
Sorry.
It goes all the time.
What? So I will let you finish your tip, but I definitely want to hear what a good average is, or what an average might be for a response time.
Well, response time for me is going to be like a gray to gray, which is the color scale, like 1 millisecond. That's what you're really looking for. And then sub, 5 milliseconds for the color accuracy. But most high-end monitors need to hit that 1 millisecond gray to gray response time.
Do you have to clap to find that out?
No, you don't have to. But you can if you would like. There's nothing wrong with clapping. But
you video yourself clapping, and then you play it on the monitor. Okay.
Yeah. No, not so much. No.
All right, carry on.
Okay. All right, but yes, the faster the response time, the better off that you're going to be whenever it comes to playing your games. Response time meaning how quickly you make a movement using your controller, as to how quickly it responds and it's seen on the screen. So you want those to be as exactly close to 0, which means no difference. So the next thing to consider is going to be the size of your monitor. And this goes into competitive gaming again as well. The size of the monitor can help you or hinder you. Smaller ones tend to be better if you're playing games, because there's less head movement that you have to do back and forth. So a lot of your high-end gamers, competitive gamers, I should say, they use smaller monitors. That way, it's less time for them to have to track the motions of what's going on the screen. As opposed to somebody using a 50-inch screen, and if you're at a table or even a reasonably close distance, you're going to have to move your head. So,
wait, so
Josh?
can I be a better gamer if I have a smaller monitor?
Possibly. Your response time could be better.
Right.
You couldn't get a monitor small enough to make me a better gamer. Like, it's just, maybe postage stamp size, and I'd be great.
Right. You can try that too.
Mm-hmm. Getting that FPS in Tetris. That's what you
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's so funny you say that because I just started having to use my monitors in, I think I mentioned to you about the issues I had with scaling the resolution. Because I have 4K monitors, and so the one-to-one comparison is to run them like 1080p monitors or 2160 monitors. When I'm running them as 2160, I notice that I have to I got to get the pointer to the other side of the display, and it takes forever. So that's interesting.
Yep, same thing can happen with playing the game. So, and then that goes back into your response time, and then you've got liftoff, and there's different things that you have to take into consideration at that point. But, yep, you're exactly right with that, Josh.
Do they still use high-end CRTs in competitive gaming, or if those...
I don't see them anymore, especially now since there's refresh rates that are over 500 megahertz now on TN panels.
Because I would say about 8 to 10 years ago, sometimes you could see them, but I think it was the 900 or 9000 series.
Yeah.
Was the 900s.
And the reason I think that they've stopped now is because obviously there's no connector for it.
Yeah.
Or HDMI or DVI. I'm sorry, not DVI, but DisplayPort. And if you wanted to use one of them, then you would have to go through converters or connectors, and then that could even slow or lower the response time of the input that you're doing on your device. So I think that's why because it's going to introduce some input lag. Yep.
Makes sense. Yeah, and I think the analog chipset is just completely gone off of them.
Yeah.
There's no even processing for it.
Right.
Interesting. Good point.
The next one would be the panel type. The panel type can vary in strengths and weaknesses. Like I said a while ago, a TN panel, which is a twisted pneumatic. There's IPS or a VA. And even now OLEDs are becoming more prominent in gaming. IPS up until OLED was probably your best in response time. I'm sorry, not response time, but resolution and viewing angles. Meaning you didn't have to be directly in front of the television or your monitor to enjoy what the scene was supposed to look like throughout the entire picture. So instead of having to sit directly in front of your monitor, if you got to about 75 degrees, everything would wash out and turn gray and white, and you couldn't see the screen well. So that is a TN panel for the most part. They're meant to be displayed straight on. And you can test that usually just with your eyes if you just want to shift your head, and see if it does change. Then odds are if it does, it's a TN panel. You wouldn't experience that from an OLED or an IPS screen. It may dim a little bit with a VA, but nothing like a TN. So, anybody have a question?
No, I don't have a question. But you're talking IPS.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have to PS. Again, this is very good beer.
It's only one beer.
It was
wow.
Freaking can.
This was his first beer.
It was
this
my
is all
only
still
beer.
based on the first beer.
I'm gonna IP in my chair.
Oh wow.
All right.
Well, we can waste some time
to get
until he gets back.
Hey, Glendon, I had a question for you.
Hey, Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, what about G-Sync and FreeSync?
Yeah, what about them, pal?
Yeah, can you tell me about those?
Yeah, I'll tell you about them.
Okay.
Is that is your list anyway?
Yeah, it's on my list. It's on my list.
Well, I'll ask him. That's not something that's potentially in his list.
Yeah.
So
G-Sync, FreeSync is a variable refresh rate. How about that?
G-Sync.
Yeah.
He answered your question, and you've got more. He's answered your question. You've got more questions now.
It's all right. We can go over.
No, what were you gonna ask, Brad?
For IPS panels, were they more color accurate over VA panels?
Yes.
Before OLEDs. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm. IPS was the choice for viewing angles and color accuracy for the most part.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I'm still on my computer rig from 2016. I've done very little upgrades from it. And I bought an AOC IPS monitor. It's 60 hertz, 1080p. I think it's 27 inch. Still works fine. Would I like higher refresh rate? Yes. Would I like higher resolution? Yes. But at the time, IPS was the most color accurate. It was a budget-friendly monitor, and it's worked fine. But it's time for an upgrade soon. So
yeah, and I recommend OLED.
OLED's where it's at. It's just a lot more expensive.
Yeah,
but it's worth it in the long run because
they're starting to come down in price now.
Yeah, still less expensive than micro LED.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I touched on this on the last podcast too. But if you build a computer, let's say you save for a while and you build a computer that's new everything to the market, new GPU, new CPU, max out your RAM, motherboard, whatever it may be, your mileage on that PC is going to last longer. So if you build a computer today for $2,500, $3,000, and you get over 10 years of use out of it, cost of ownership is cheaper than building a cheap PC and going long term. And you can obviously upgrade your monitor long term. So it's just time for an upgrade for myself, I guess. Good enough.
Yeah, it is. Chris, you're back.
Yeah, this guy's back.
I am.
Did everything FreeSync for you?
Yes.
Go free.
I G-synced and FreeSynced. G-Sync is that NVIDIA, and FreeSync wasn't that AMD originally, but then
they both still are two different technologies for variable refresh rate, which means your graphics card gets in perfect tandem with your gaming graphics card and to your monitor. So that eliminates your screen tearing or the slowdown or the stutter that you might see. A lot of people are susceptible to that. I know I am personally. So if I'm playing a game that my graphics card is having a little trouble keeping up with and I can see the tearing, then I will make sure that I enable that if I don't want to lose any eye candy, right? So you could drop your settings in the game and boost your frames per second, or you can use that technology that cycles them together at the same time and it doesn't look like there's anything happening to it at all. And you're running at least a steady 60 hertz refresh rate.
And I wasn't meaning to jump on your list. As I was walking away, I heard Josh do it, so I wanted to make sure that was capped.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Both of you.
It
was an intuitive question. So
no, it wasn't.
I get it.
Not for me. Not for me.
I was trying to save you, Josh, but you just threw yourself under the bus.
I'm really good at
and we all
watched. My number one skill, throwing myself under the bus.
Hey, put that on your resume.
Gonna do it.
Hey.
Yeah.
Better you than me.
And with the another thing with the FreeSync and the G-Sync, you're going to have a range of how good, or not how good, but a range of what hertz that technology is going to work. So for G-Sync now, I think that it goes up to 175 hertz on certain monitors. From 60 to 175. Within that range, it's capable of keeping your screen from tearing. And then I think with AMD's answer, the FreeSync, you can achieve 144.
And the tearing, that's basically when, like, you've got a flat image, but then it shifts.
Yeah, it shifts up and down.
Shifts, right?
Or splits off.
Vertically.
Yep. but it's always going to be vertical.
This is actually like giving me PTSD in a way to when I had a PowerBook G4. I had the worst problem for some reason with DVDs that I was playing on it tearing. Like I would have the worst tearing playing any DVD, and I didn't know what it was at the time, so I was going to like computer shop to try and show them this, and like they weren't getting it, and oh man, so yeah, I'm sensitive to that too, for sure.
Yeah, I really am. So anytime that I can use that technology with FreeSync or G-Sync, I always turn it on and make sure it's enabled. The good thing about FreeSync, it's exactly what it is. It's free, means it's open source. It actually works on both AMD cards and NVIDIA cards, but it's now becoming normal for G-Sync to do the same thing. It's compatible back and forth on AMD or NVIDIA products.
But even beyond that, I've got FreeSync monitors now, and they're connected to a MacBook 16-inch,
right,
by way of a Thunderbolt cable through a dock. But they're both pushing 144 on. And what are these? Aren't 4K. They're not. These are for.
Those are 1440p monitors, so they're 2K.
2K, yeah. So I got two 2K displays. It just made sense to do two displays in my particular setup, and it wasn't originally here at the time. But I will say this, even though the new MacBook, right, or sorry, not new, the M1 MacBook does not have AMD or G
no
NVIDIA graphics in it. Yeah, it'll still power, and FreeSync is fully compatible with it. And it's gotten better over time with the macOS support.
Yep. So it uses its own version, I think, from what I understand, a variable refresh rate on their processors, but it's still within the specs of those monitors. So you're still going to benefit.
No, it's not. It's not. It was originally a couple Mac OS versions ago. Their variable refresh rate would always trip on. It just I said no. I wanted to lock at. I think at that time I was locked at 100 or 120, whatever it was. I said, no, just stay here, don't move. And then it would always revert. And then the previous version of macOS fixed it so that you could just have the fixed or the locked refresh rate. And you could even toggle that. I think I was at 120 until I realized I could toggle something else and go to 144. And so I ended up going to 144, and but I can tell you, as much of a frame rate guy as I am, I'd be hard pressed to tell you the difference between a 120 and a 144 even side by side. They're negligible. Like at that point, 90 and 120 I can see, but 120 and 144 I'm not sure. Visually I can't figure out the differences.
I'm the same way.
I can't either. But definitely sub 120.
Yes.
I can definitely see.
Yep.
Because I can't do 60 hertz screens anymore.
Nope.
Oh, another fun fact, if you have one of the new iPhone 15 Pros or 14 Pro or one of the Pro iPhones since they started with ProMotion, if you want to experience the 60 frames per second again, just turn on low power mode. It's brutal.
Yep.
Awful.
Ooh. Yeah.
Well, you can turn off, I think you can toggle it beyond going low power mode. There's another toggle for reducing the frame rate. Yeah, you can
reduce motion, maybe.
No, reduce motion will make it such that the animation or the transitions.
Oh, right, the transitions.
They'll fade instead of
right.
moving.
Yes,
they fade. So I turned that on. That's how I know that one, because I turned that on for sure.
My big issue is not so much with the screens anymore, but with movies and TV shows. But the fact that they're filmed in 24, I think it's 24, 25, up to 30 frames per second. And I mean, they still look watchable, right? But you can go on YouTube today and watch a 1080p 60 versus 1080p 30. And it's a world of difference. I understand there's data limitations for filming and it's a lot more data, but if we were even able to get movies today in 1080p 60 or 4K 60, again, the media is going to be more expensive, but the content or the quality content that you're taking in is substantially better. But it's a little frustrating that we've got these high hertz refresh rates, but
right.
Consoles, for example, you're watching stuff on Netflix, 24 to 30 frames per second. And when you're playing video games, depending on the game itself, it might not even hit the 60 FPS. It's just, 60 or 120. I guess the modern consoles can go up to 120. But
yeah, they can go up to 120. But there's another thing going on there that they do in the software end that is dynamic resolution scaling, to where if you're playing a game and in order for it to stay at that 120 hertz or 120 frames per second refresh rate, it will dynamically throughout the time period of the game during graphical intensive scenes drop the resolution from 4K to 1440p. You don't really see it because it's blended well and it's quick, but unless it's an extended scene, it doesn't stay there. It just fluctuates whatever it needs to keep that 120 frames per second. So you may say that you're playing at 4K, but it may not be all of the time, just depending on the circumstances.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some sort of a upscaling in the background happening for sure. Yeah. So I do recall that. It's interesting.
Yeah, they're actually using the AMD FreeSync technology in all the new consoles because it's powered by a AMD AGP. So both consoles are the Xbox and the PlayStation 4 or 5.
Also, real quick, Chris is right. There is an option under accessibility and under motion that is in addition to reduce motion, it's limit frame rate. There's a toggle.
Yeah, that's what it is.
On the iPad, I think it was where you would have to originally turn off, the ProMotion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a toggle for that. Yeah.
I'm not
even
sure
on the desktop
doing that. Like, why? What's the purpose to do that? Like, why is this
battery life on the mobile devices?
All right, I guess so.
Yeah, it takes more power to push those frames per second at those hertz.
Fair enough.
But 60 frames per second definitely hurts.
It does hurt.
It does. So does 120.
120 is good. I can do 120.
Yeah,
it doesn't hurt as much.
It still hurts.
Really? It doesn't hurt. Well, I guess technically speaking, it does hurt.
Yes.
Go into the weeds.
All right. So the next point that I want to make, while you're on your journey to get a new monitor, is HDR important to you? It's super important to me now because once you go to HDR and you get to see real HDR content on a screen that is certified Besa HDR and can reach those certain levels of luminance, you never want to go back. I don't want to. So HDR, it's going to enhance the colors and make them more immersive while you're gaming or you're watching your content. Your brights, like reflections, those are going to stand out more. The skyline during the sunset, it's going to be brighter at the sun as opposed to having, lesser contrast throughout the rest of the screen. And that's why it's called high dynamic range. Exactly. So it just boosts the range of the light that's visible to you. It makes it brighter in certain areas on the screen. What about you guys? Do you use HDR? Any of you?
Yeah, remember we were fiddling with that earlier this week on the Twitch stream, but I just couldn't get the image to look great. It just didn't. It did not bowl me over. Like I was like, oh, I can't live without it now. It just didn't work for me. Maybe I'll go back to it again on the external screens, but either the text was too sharp or it was too fuzzy. I couldn't find the sweet spot. Right. And again, maybe it's just a matter of setting it, not thinking about it for a day, and then continuing to try it just to acclimate to the difference in what the what the image is. But even after watching HDR content, honestly, like I said, I'm willing to chalk that up to probably not having the best HDR compatible displays.
Yeah.
Because it in many ways looked worse, not better for me.
Yeah. The time that I saw HDR work its magic on me was whenever I first saw it on an OLED. On an OLED, it stands out much more than it would on a TN, VA, or an IPS panel, because with an OLED, the screen can turn completely off for its darks, for its blacks.
Or you mean the pixels can turn on and off?
Pixel completely turns off, not physically the television or the monitor.
Right.
But each one of those pixels are individually lit. It's an organic light emitting diode is what the OLED stands for. So whenever the pixel turns off and then you've got something that's right next to it that's white and super bright, I mean, that contrast is going to really stand out. So an OLED is where it's at currently, or a micro LED for HDR content. And it ranges from 400 being the scale. There's a number from 400 all the way up to, I think there's a 1200 now for the VESA standards for HDR content. You don't really get any benefit of it at 400 or 600. Once you get above the 600 nits range on that scale, that's whenever you can really see the HDR stand out. So anything on 1000 and up, you're really going to notice the HDR and have a better experience.
I actually have a theory about the iPhone's HDR. When I take pictures in HDR, I swear, because the screen is HDR, so it's displaying an HDR version of the photo.
Right.
I swear it can hide like imperfections better, because the brightness of the brights is so high that I can't see that it's like not as sharp as it could be, or over sharpened, or whatever the case may be. It actually makes the pictures look better, but not really because they're better. It's because they're just brighter.
Right.
Yeah. See, that's the thing is taking those photos and seeing them on the iPhone screen almost seems too bright, too contrasting. I have that issue with Pixelate Pro, and I'll come back to that. But when I view those or even upload those photos to social or view them somewhere, on the desktop, they just don't look as good. And it's good. It's a screen, but that to me is a huge limitation to taking those shots that may look good on some screens, but look absolutely ghastly on others.
Yeah. And a lot of times that can be blamed on two different things. Like you said, one, the monitor or the screen that you're using or the television is not certified at a higher rate or a higher number, like I made reference to. If it's not, then you're not going to have as much contrast. But the most important thing is how the content is mastered. Excuse me. So what I'm saying by that is how well they implemented HDR into the game or into the movie or into the show that you're watching. That can really impact your HDR experience as well. And how well you calibrate your HDR. Whenever you get a new monitor, usually there's a calibration that you can go to, or you get a calibration sheet that's sent with your monitor, like I did on my particular one, showing me how it was set up and where it ranked at on the scales for HDR, as well as, Adobe for the color accuracy for the sRGB. Josh, you need to go, bud?
Oh, yeah, I'm probably going to have to hop off.
Okay. That's fine.
All good.
No worries.
But I feel like this podcast could be like, we could almost create like a progress bar.
Yeah.
Of the podcast.
Theoretically.
Yeah.
And it may very well be that we learn that 4 people is a good amount of people for a podcast.
Yeah.
5 is always good for a buffer, but I feel 4 we're learning. What do you know?
Yeah.
Like 4
learning
maybe,
experience.
4 may be where we shoot for, and it's learning. You got to go, Josh. Thank you. Appreciate you hanging.
No, thank you. It's been
joining.
fun.
Yes, it has. Thank you. Love for the
See
bird.
you, Josh.
That's it. Josh is gone. Come go. Are you
Just like that? Just like that.
He's hanging on. He's got something else to say.
He like you're making this awkward, dude. This is like it was like we were like segueing.
See you, bud.
See ya.
All right, Glenn, you got more?
Yeah, I got one more, and then that'll be it for mine. To me, the number one thing is going to be cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Always make sure that you have a budget. Most people have a budget anyway, and you're going to need to set up and find a happy medium for what your needs may be or what your wants are, and compare it to what the capabilities of your hardware on your system can do, and stay within those parameters. Because if you have a GTX, a 4060, then it's probably not the best idea for you to run out and try to find a 4K monitor that runs at a 240 hertz refresh rate, because you're going to benefit absolutely zero from having that monitor, right? So shop within the limits and the constraints that you have with your hardware. And you're going to learn that at that level, a 1080p monitor is going to be perfectly fine for you. And you can get great OLED IPS monitors for, thousands cheaper, hundreds cheaper than an OLED panel that's doing 240 hertz.
Yeah, that's been my reason for not upgrading yet. I'm still waiting for that OLED to drop in price. Obviously, I need to build a new computer. Well, I don't need to, but I want to. But that's one of the determining factors, is that I want to replace my monitor as well, potentially go to 4K. And 4K OLED, 120 hertz, it's a big premium right now. It's a big chunk of change. So the technology's out. It's eventually going to get cheaper. But when is the question?
Right. And that's potentially it's a law of diminishing returns, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big deal.
Yeah, and we're seeing the trend now. We're at the sub $1,000 point on these monitors, depending upon the size and the specs of how fast they go and the HDR. But yeah, you can see that that's starting to be a little bit of a trend. I know right now everything's inflated, but that was what we were heading into before the inflation started. So
yeah, I'd go for as much as I could afford every step of the way. Cram as much FPSs into my eyeballs as I can take.
Yeah, I want all the FPSs in my eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
The old adage of future proofing, there's been a debate online for eons. Is it a thing? Can you actually do it? My answer is kind of.
Yeah.
No computer. Yeah, remember what was the company name? Was it EPC or something like that? The forever, you never have to upgrade your computer.
Yeah, the E-machines or something.
E-machine. Yeah, that was it. I mean, you can't buy a $200 computer back in the late 90s, early 2000s and expect to get 50 years of use out of it. At the same time, I mean, if you're going out and spending $500 on a computer, it'll last you, let's say, 4 years ish for modern, up-to-date gaming, high resolution, whatever it may be. If you spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on everything brand new, top of the line, you might get 8, 9, 10 years out of it before you have to upgrade that GPU or get a newer CPU, right? The sockets change, but you can buy that 10 core versus the 6 core you might have gotten, or an i5, or you're buying an i7 or an i9 instead of the i5 you've got. So you can do those incremental upgrades.
Yeah.
So future proofing, I think, is the thing, right? The more you spend up front, the less you're going to spend overall.
I agree.
In that time span. Yeah.
I take the same approach, or do my best, right? Can't always do it, right? But it is a balance, a delicate balance. That's
the reason why the credit cards have limits.
Well, yeah, that is for sure. Well, I'll be like, I'm not sure when I'm going to be upgrading my monitors again. I feel I can get another 2, 3, maybe even 4 years out of them before I'm like, okay, maybe it's time. So I'm hoping to, until they die, like basically like when they're done. And then I'll make the shift. And even then I may go back to just using one screen rather than having two. Two is just a nice to have, for background, but, certainly having one is critical. Even in the current resolution, which I wasn't even sold on, I'd much rather have like a wider, taller display rather than I know some people love the the
ultra
super
wide.
Ultra wide. Yeah. I did that for a brief while. And I don't think I could do an ultra wide again. I don't know. It was just different. Maybe it was just my head going there and then going this way, that way. And maybe it was the pitch, right? Of where, the sharpness of the text wasn't, it was, things were jaggy. It wasn't perfect, but that was, again, it was the product. I don't blame the underlying technology or the idea of an ultra wide, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do next, apart from, getting one with a high, that's the only thing I care. Response time and refresh rate. Those are like, to me, number one, easily, not even being a gamer. Those are the things that I look for. Easily.
Yeah, personally, I don't think I'll be doing an ultra wide. I mean, for gaming, they're great because your center of attention's in the center of the screen, and then the games will stretch. So in the peripheral, they look great.
Yeah.
But when you're working in, Office or Outlook or something, you're turning. That's not great for the neck and everything else.
Not.
Same thing you said for using two monitors, though.
That's true. Yeah.
I got two and one, too.
I've had 3 monitors before, and they personally at the time they scaled better, just because this was probably Windows 8. What was it? Vista through 7 era kind of thing. But triple screen at the time, I could do research on one screen, my homework on the other, and YouTube or whatever's preoccupied me while I'm up and running. And the early ultra wides, when they were plugged into a Windows machine, they didn't have the triple software setup, so they would just kind of do a half screen. They've gotten better, but the aspect ratio was just way off. But again, that's changed with the newer monitors.
Yeah, with the newer ones, there's not that issue any longer, to where you can see like a line where one monitor stopped and the other started, because essentially they were just shoving 3 1080p panels together and upping the resolution to a 1440.
Right.
But yeah, they've come a long way, even with the games and the formats now that we take in the content. They're mastered, for ultra wides now, both in gaming and then the way that even YouTube videos, you can get a 1440p or a 3440 by 1440 setting for the ultra wides.
Yep.
I'll probably stick with ultra slims, not ultra wides. I don't know. I think I'm good that way. It depends. I don't know I cannot predict the future. I don't know what's going to happen when I'm going to make my choice. I just know when I'm going to make it, I'm going to say, hey, Glenn, what do I get? I need to get need to get a new one. What do I get? Like, I don't want to do the research. Ain't nobody got time for that. Just tell me how.
Yeah, we do. We got time for it.
You got time for it. I just no, just tell me which one I need to get, and I'm good, and I'll be happy.
Nice quality TN panel will do you well.
Oh.
So I hear.
No, don't buy those.
Oh, okay. Well, because I was like, it didn't make sense to me. It's like, well, it kind of grays out if you look at it the wrong way. I'm like,
yeah, they're awful.
Sounds temperamental. All I've seen, honestly, is IPSs.
Mm-hmm.
They're
good screens.
Common enough that every other panel I see is IPS.
Yep.
At least
OLEDs aren't perfect. They've got their own weaknesses too. So
yeah, goes without saying.